All right. Well, thank you so much, Iris, for joining me. I'm super excited to have the opportunity to speak with you a little bit more. Can you maybe just introduce yourself for the audience? Tell them who you are, where you live, and maybe a little bit about what you do as well.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm pretty excited to be doing this with you this afternoon. So my name is Iris Jumbe, originally from Zimbabwe, and then super nomady experience for the last couple of decades. My background actually is in sales and marketing. That's how I started off my career. But I would say for probably the last decade or so, I've really been concentrating on communication, a little bit of PR, some marketing in there specifically, but most recently, actually inspired by COVID, my focus has been a lot on behavior change and, really motivating people to do behaviors that are beneficial to themselves, especially in the context of this current pandemic.
Great, yeah. And maybe tell us a little bit about where you live currently and some of the places that you've had a chance to call home.
Right. So right now I live in Vienna, Austria, and I've been here a while now, also close to a decade. I came back to Austria to study, actually. That was just at the turn of the decade. And before that, I was in China. Before that, I was in London. Before that, I was in China again. And before that, I was in Salzburg. So I've moved around a lot. I'm one of those people, I think, especially when I was younger, I always had itchy feet. I was like, okay, what's everyone else doing in other parts of the world? What languages are they speaking? What are they eating? What are the issues that are concerning them? What are their cultures like? What would I find weird? What would I be surprised about that we have in common? This idea of just kind of uncovering people, and not so much just through TripAdvisor or apps or whatever, but actually interactions and living where they live. That's always been very fascinating to me. And now I've been in Austria for a while, and I really like it here, so I think I might hang around a little while longer.
I love that. So sort of just finding what really speaks to you. And maybe, I'd love to hear sort of in China, what was it that you were looking for? What did you discover about China?
Well, China was an interesting trip. So I lived there for two spells. One was like 2 years and one was 6 or 7, actually. So the 2-year spell was, funnily enough, interrupted by what was an epidemic at that time, unless SARS was a pandemic. I don't even remember. So I was in China from 2001 to 2003. And the first time I went, I was in my very early 20s. And I was just like, oh, okay, I've got this English teaching qualification. Where's the weirdest place I can go with this and, teach English? And I found a school in a very small town in China. It's not actually that small, it's got 5 million people, but by Chinese standards, it's very small. And they were like, hey, come on over, we'll pay for your apartment, and we'll pay you for your flight, and you won't have to actually pay for anything. I was like, I'm in my early 20s, and they're just like throwing all these goodies at me. This sounds like a fun thing to do. So I just jumped on a plane and off I went. And I loved it, really. But I had to leave, like I said, when the pandemic hit in 2003, because they couldn't sustain our contracts anymore. They were just like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. So all the foreigners, bye. So that was that. So I always wanted to go back to China because I felt like I had unfinished business there. So I did. I went back to Shanghai this time, much bigger city. And it was brilliant.
Great, yeah. And so you mentioned sort of this difference between PR and marketing. And I think that's a question I've always had. Really, what is the difference? And what do you prefer doing?
Definitely PR by a million miles. I think, what is the difference? Oh my God, I wonder if people are going to fact check me. Like, oh my God, that's totally wrong. Okay, I'll tell you what I perceive to be the difference. It's almost, for me, quantitative versus qualitative, right? I feel like with marketing, you're trying to shift something, right? Usually a product, or a service, and you want to sell X number of units, and then you want to be able to calculate, right? How many of those units did we convert, and to what actions that we did, marketing actions can we attribute these sales? So it's very volume based. It doesn't have to be volume, but it can be in a lot of cases. Whereas PR is much more qualitative, right? It's how do people feel? What do they believe? What do they think? And I know when people hear PR, they always think of it as being really sinister, but for me, in the roles that I've worked in, sometimes people do really complicated work, and it can't be summarized in a tweet or, a headline or whatever. And it's like, okay, the organizations that engage me, they're like, look, this is our mission. This is what we're trying to do. This is who we are. We're just trying to cut through the noise so that people can just, pay attention to us. And a lot of what I do in PR is to just basically stop people from scrolling, whether it's, through their Twitter, through their Instagram, like, hey, stop, pay attention just for a beat. And then once they do focus their attention, then I think the reality of the really good work that so many people are doing can really shine through. So that's the difference.
I really like that. Yeah. Thank you for taking us through that. So can you tell us a little bit maybe more about some of the clients you have? What are they looking to achieve by leveraging PR?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I've worked on some personal branding stuff, so I definitely can't talk about that. But I, the way I work, I prefer to work with large organizations, so IGOs, intergovernmental organizations, or non-governmental organizations. It just makes more sense for me to work that way, because being able to deliver a project from the beginning to the end, right? So the research phase, the execution phase, the measurement phase, the iteration phase, the redesign phase, all of those things, it makes more sense to do that with the organization that kind of has the scope and the scale and the ambition. And so it turns out to be these IGOs, or sometimes multinationals, and NGOs that I work with. And all of them really are doing, what NGOs do. The point of building an NGO is like, hey, there's this societal problem that's really affecting us. It's really a big deal. And right now, we don't think that government on its own either can solve it or has the desire to solve it. It can be one of those two. So where a gap exists because, government is not taking care of it, and where communities really need, those are the organizations I work with. So it can be around health, it can be around social cohesion, just anything that affects a community's ability to thrive and get along well, I guess.
Yeah, fair. And if you were looking at some of the things that you're doing currently, I think the last time we had a conversation, you were talking about, COVID and sort of this pandemic. Is that sort of what you're still assisting a lot of organizations with?
Yeah, and I mean, not that many, because I work by myself. So for me, like a perfect balance in terms of number of clients would be like 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a pretty sweet spot at the moment where I'm kind of averaging 5 or 6, which is interesting, because when you and I met, right, I think I was at that phase. I was like, oh, okay, COVID has really shown my business model to be super vulnerable, and I had to rethink a lot of things. I think for me as a communicator, it just makes sense to be COVID focused right now, and specifically around I think behavior change and this idea of motivating people, because we went through this phase, right? First of all, we're like, COVID's not going to affect me. What is that? Do you know what I mean? And then it was like, oh my God, we're all going to die. And it was like this super panic. And then it was like, okay, we're going to be really, really good citizens, and we're going to, kind of bond together as a community and follow all these measures to make sure everyone's okay. And now I think we're moving to that, we're kind of over it phase, right? And I think people are in a lot of ways kind of tired and not that scared anymore, because in some places it's not as bad as they were told it was. And that's partly to do with how things were communicated in the beginning. Do you know what I mean? Like really scary images and really scary projections and stuff like that. And I think across all of those phases, communication has such an important role to be like, okay, this is why you shouldn't be afraid, but this is why you should stay vigilant. And this is how you have all the power in terms of managing, how this disease or this virus affects you or doesn't affect you. So a lot of my work right now, maybe 60%, is COVID focused, which is funny, right? Because 8 months ago, nobody had even heard that term before. So.
Yeah. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what it's like for you to be a solo entrepreneur, because I know that you've also gone through sort of little changes in your business with having support and not having support. What are some of the things that you've learned?
Oh, so much. Well, first of all, I've learned that I really like this way of working, and not so much just like in like a frivolous way, but I think it's really fundamental for me to be able to consult rather than, I think, to embed more permanently into organizations. I've had like this huge fortune that everyone I've worked with, I've liked. I've never had a client where I've had to be like, oh, okay, we're going to have to break up because this is not working for me, which is unusual, because I think in consulting you get these clients who are nightmares. That's never happened to me. I've heard about it, but it's never happened. But I think the thing that I love the most is that I'm always learning something completely different. I would say every single day, at least 3 things that I've never heard of before or never considered before. And that's the value of being able to work across different projects, whether they focus on, like I said, religion or health or behavior change, or I do some marketing work, by the way, so it's not the bulk of what I do, but in all of those spaces, you learn so much, not just about what's going on, but about what's important to people in different parts of the world. And I think once you understand what's important to someone, then you can really motivate them, like how to talk to them and how to tap into them and how to really meet them on their level. So for me, that's why I work as a solo entrepreneur, so that I can go where the need is and kind of do my job and then be like, okay, well, it's been fun, and call me again if you need me. But I don't need to necessarily embed myself deeper than that. I just need to kind of respect and understand the culture and then do the work, and then see where else I can learn, because the learning is as exciting and important for me as is obviously the monetary compensation. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't matter, but this idea of being able to be like, I'm smarter today than I was yesterday, not just factually, but just understanding people better. Like, why does person X behave like that, or why in this part of the world do they think that this is okay or whatever. And when you have those one-on-one conversations, you're like, oh, okay, I understand you so much better now. And it's very inspiring.
I love that. So just constantly wanting to evolve and curious. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I am. I am curious. I think that's exactly the word that I'd use to describe myself.
Yeah. And I think that's something that really resonates with me as well, because that's one of the reasons why I love what I'm doing. Because every single day I learn something new about myself, about engaging with others, and then I can share it with other people as well. So I love that. And, I'm just really curious. You said something that I also thought I'd love to learn for myself. How do you pick your clients? I think it's amazing that you can say that you've loved everyone you've worked with. Is there some special way you pick your clients? Some sort of onboarding you take them through? Is it just intuition? What are you doing?
No, I think what happened was, when I first started consulting, it was like I mentioned, I was teaching English in China, right? And teaching English in China actually morphed into copywriting, copy editing for, let's say, Chinese companies who wanted to move into international markets. So that's really how it started. And somebody just walked up to me and said, hey, can you write a press release? I was like, sure. And then they recommended me to someone, and then it became a business based on that. The clients got bigger, and then it became what I did. But I don't think I really actually planned it that way. I think I tried to be consistent, because I always knew intuitively that the referral was the most important thing, that recommendation. And that worked for me really well for, like, I'd say 10, 12 years. And then we got to February, March. And then, like I told you, it really just fell apart. This is what I was saying, like the business model, right? I had never done any marketing. And I don't really remember the last time I'd applied for a consultancy, let's say before. I think that actually I did. I applied for a consultancy in November 2019. I remember the one to write a book. But before that, everything had been through recommendations. And even the consultancy that I ended up getting was through an organization I'd worked with before. And they told me, we're giving it to you because we kind of know what you're about. So I always thought that people knowing what I'm about would be enough, right, to keep the business ticking over. And then COVID came, and it just put a wrecking ball through everything. And then I had to be like, okay, you started off as a sales and marketer, right? You know how to pitch. And I decided I needed to rebuild my network, which is how you and I met. Yeah. Right? Because I had been very reliant on the China network, which is now 10 years old, and they don't remember me the way they did. I mean, I've hung on to clients, but there's people I haven't seen now for 10 years. So that connection is not going to be as strong, and the referrals are not going to be as strong, which was fine as long as my clients were consistent. But when their consistency changed, I really needed to shift my thinking. I'm sorry, I completely forgotten your question. So I don't even know if I've answered it now or if I'm just rambling around.
Well, no, it sounds like to me that it's about a connection, right? So if you've worked with someone, you've done good work for them, they know who to recommend you to. And that's why it sounds like things really work out well for you.
Not just that though, because those people will leave, right? They'll leave their companies, and they'll probably be promoted, hopefully, right? So they'll leave for a better job, and they'll have a bigger budget, an expanded role, and they'll be like, okay, I really want to prove myself in this role. Who can I trust to partner with me on this project so that I don't embarrass myself and that I can build up my equity within this new position? And I hope that my clients see me as being able to give value to them. It's not a conversation that we actually have. Like, okay, so why are you into me? We don't tell each other. This idea of, if somebody does recommend you, that means that they not just appreciate your work, but I think they appreciate how you work. And I think that's as important as the quality of your work would be, the process and the transparency and all of those things.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of people in the type of work we do, coaching, consulting, are trying to make sure, not making sure they're doing a good job for it, but just, keeping in mind that referrals, word of mouth can really, make or break your business at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think one of the things we were talking about when we were getting ready for this chat was to say the quality of your network, which is what it is, right, is as important. Because I was having this discussion with someone like, okay, should you go to school and get, another credential, or should you just actually just try to press the flesh? And sometimes, the two actually marry up together, right? So you get to meet people by going to school. But sometimes I think from my perspective now, I'd say if you could choose one, as in like being in the right room with the right people who can develop your business, or getting the credential, I'd say be in the right room with the right people. But sometimes you have to have the credentials to enter the room, but whatever, but yeah. I think this idea of the network and the connection and the relationship is so important.
Yeah. All right. So what's next for you? What's next for your business?
I can't even say that I thought that far ahead. I really can't. I think that would be pretending. I feel like this idea of planning and stuff, I had this brilliant plan in January about, okay, this is how I'm going to diversify the industries I work in, the regions I work in, and all of those sorts of things. And some of those things I've actually managed to do. So I've started to work, for example, in the US very recently. I got my first US client, because usually because of the China focus, and actually I work with some clients in the Middle East, and I live in Central Europe, everything has been sort of almost Eastern based. So I managed to do that, but it was more by chance than anything else. I think my plan now is to just make my business model pandemic resistant. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that now, but I think these vulnerabilities that we've learned about, right, through COVID, I feel like it would be crazy to run a business the same way you did it 12 months ago. I don't think anybody's doing that now. I think it's a lot more kind of scenario planning. So, okay, what could happen? And what if this client fell away? Or what if this industry changed? Or even what if this currency collapsed? Because I work across different currencies as well. And those are things I never really had to consider in a meaningful way before this year. So I think for me, I've set myself two goals, which is to keep on getting more resilient, which is very important to me, and to keep on learning more, because I think that's where I bring value to my clients. Like I said, I'm a communication consultant, but I do so many different projects. I do kind of research projects, I do marketing related projects, I do communication related projects as well. But I think, and I do work around sort of business processes and helping to set those up, because I've been in different phases. And I think this idea of how can I make myself useful is what I really want to flesh out.
I love that. Yeah. So just continuing to evolve. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. And I think it really is evolve or become irrelevant. I mean, or no longer have a business. Yeah.
But not really just evolve as in kind of without intention, but really to evolve in a way that will bring value to the clients I'm working with, but also bring value to myself. Does that make sense? Like, yes. I want to feel good. There's that song by Desiree. I don't know. It's really kind of cheesy. She's that song, "What have you done today to make you feel proud?" I don't know if you know. You should Google it afterwards. Anyway,
I will.
Super cheesy song, but it's like, what have you done today to make you feel proud? And it's a song that they use like on these iconic ads and stuff. But that was really one of my big things that was occurring in my mind when I decided to work for myself. I was like, I want to be proud of everything I do. I don't know how proud I'd feel if I was like selling Ferraris to billionaires in Monaco. And there's nothing wrong with that. Billionaires in Monaco need Ferraris. But I'm just saying, I don't know that I would feel that inspired by it, And so I think that's my focus. I want to evolve in a way that allows me to be of service to projects that I'm proud to be affiliated with, Like if I can call my mom and be like, oh, this is what I did today, as opposed to, we shifted another 1 million units of, I don't know, some high-brand luxury item. There's nothing wrong with those things, you guys. I like nice things too, but just it's not that exciting in terms of way to spend, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day. Yeah.
No, I completely understand. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to sort of remove myself, right, from a more structured environment and work for myself. That way, really, I can be very intentional about making sure I'm doing something that resonates with me, that I feel is aligned, and that I don't feel like I'm sort of, similar to what you were saying, like I don't know a better word for it, but I'm not sort of selling myself out, because a lot of my background is in business development and sales as well. So,
Yeah. And I think the funny thing is, I'm just in my head, I'm thinking of my first ever boss who taught me how to sell. And I don't want to, I worry, like, I don't want him to be like, oh, okay, great, you're so ungrateful. Because I'm not. There's so much value in sales in terms of teaching how to talk to people and how to project and how to at least give people a sense of, this is someone that we can entrust with our ideas and our mission and those sorts of things. It really does come from a sales background, this idea of, when politicians are going for election or whatever, you're really selling is what you're doing. So I think there's huge value in sales. I think for me, though, the thing is when you finish one project and you want to move into the next one, I just am not that excited by, okay, now, it's the next dollar target. And there's nothing wrong with those money things, but it's not the thing that would make me work, for example, a 12-hour day if a project needed it. That's not what motivates me. I think I'm really motivated by, okay, this is going to change the life about someone and we can write a really cool story about it afterwards, and share it and open people's eyes and that sort of thing. So that's pretty exciting.
Definitely. Yeah, I hear you. And I agree with you. I always tell people, especially when I'm working with leaders who feel like a lot of times it's, about throwing money at the problem, that a lot of people are actually not motivated by money in that same way. They'd prefer, being appreciated in some way, a thank you sometimes. It's really funny how it's, just wanting to be something bigger, part of something bigger, or even a better title can sometimes go a longer way than, increasing someone's salary. So I understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Although the salary increase would not be turned.
It still can be a priority, but it's not the only thing we look for.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, there's room for all of those things. I think it's this idea of you want to do good and you want to feel good, and then you also want to be able to, maybe pursue the things that are your passions rather than just your kind of basic needs. So yeah, it's a big.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. If people wanted to get in touch, what would be the best way to do so?
If you wanted to get in touch, I'm on LinkedIn. It's my only social media that I'm on. So my name is Iris, like the flower, and then Jumbe, like jumble, I guess, but without the L.
There you go. And I'll make sure I put a link as well to that.
Sure. Yeah. I think that would be the best way to reach out to me.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you again for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
It was awesome speaking with you. Take care. Bye.